The infamous Soul Train scene that ended it all. No television show in American history carved a lane quite like Soul Train. And then, in 2006, it vanished. No farewell, no final bow, just silence. Except for one clue, a recorded episode that never aired. What happened behind those unbroadcast frames? To answer that, we go back to where the line began. Welcome aboard, right on time for a super slick ride. Don Cornelius's story starts on the south side of Chicago in 1936, against the backdrop of a divided America. Before the camera lights, there were working-class shifts, traffic officer, salesman, then a pivot, a short broadcasting course in 1966. Soon he was reporting at WCIU-TV, a local station where he first tested the power of a microphone and a message. From that momentum, a new idea took shape, one that didn't just air music, it honored a community. In August 1970, the idea became a show, Soul Train, premiering in Chicago. The setup was simple and electric. Live performances, local dancers, guest musicians. It caught fire quickly. 1 year later, on October 2, 1971, the train went national with sponsorship support from major companies like Sears and Johnson Products Company. Suddenly, a Saturday ritual found a home in living rooms across America. The camera didn't just capture performers. It reflected a culture that had been underrepresented on mainstream television. Through its golden years, the stage became a hall of fame in motion. James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5, later LL Cool J and Mary J. Blige lit up the set. But the show did more than elevate singers. It opened doors for dancers like Rosie Perez, Jody Watley, Clinton Gent, and Jeffrey Daniel, who would later join Shalimar and help popularize the moonwalk technique with Michael Jackson. Here, choreography wasn't just steps, it was language. Fashion wasn't just clothing, it was a statement. One segment crystallized that spirit more than any other, the Soul Train line. 2 rows of dancers facing each other. The center aisle became a runway of originality. One by one, dancers stepped into the spotlight, improvising a signature groove, part declaration, part celebration. That line wasn't only a camera-friendly format, it was a weekly ceremony of self-expression. For viewers, it was appointment television. For participants, it could be life-changing. At the heart of it all stood Don Cornelius. Calm, refined, and quietly commanding. He wasn't merely the host. He was executive producer, editor, and the show's creative compass. His presence set the tone, elegant, intentional, serious about joy. His vision was unapologetically expansive. Television should not be a privilege for one group, but a platform where cultures are represented truthfully and positively. Over more than 100 episodes, Soul Train became the longest-running music television program of its era, with ratings peaking in the late 1970s and early 1980s around 4.5 to 5.0 weekly. Brands targeting Black consumers saw Soul Train as the perfect stage, reinforcing its anchor position in mainstream culture. The brand grew, music awards, fashion events, merchandise, and Cornelius was recognized among the most influential figures in Black entertainment. In 1971, Life magazine named him one of the 100 most important Americans. But cultural icons cast long shadows. And as the era shifted, so did the currents beneath the surface. A rift was coming. Behind the scenes, Cornelius was known as a strict operator, exercising control over what aired and how it looked. He weighed in on appearance, costumes, even choreography. Rosie Perez recalled that suggestive moves or anything outside the approved aesthetic could be flagged or redirected. For some dancers, these guardrails preserved a signature look. For others, they felt limiting. There was another tension that grew louder with time: compensation. Many dancers, appearing on national television, weren't paid because the exposure itself was treated as opportunity. Some would later describe the experience as exploitative, their creativity fueling a massive cultural engine without equivalent benefits in return. The stage transformed lives, but not always sustainably for those who filled it. Then came a shift in the soundscape. Hip-hop was ascendant in the late 1980s, and Cornelius held a conservative view of the genre. He believed it trafficked in negative imagery and language that didn't align with the show's ethos. In a 1992 interview, he put it plainly, "I don't want my show to be overtaken by sounds that I don't believe represent anything positive." His position set off immediate debate. To some, he was protecting a legacy. To others, he was resisting a future already in motion. As new platforms embraced the movement, shows like Yo, MTV Raps, and Rap City on BET, top rap artists like Tupac Shakur, Nas, and Snoop Dogg were less likely to appear on Soul Train. Younger audiences followed the energy elsewhere. It wasn't just taste, it was timing. The show that once defined the moment now looked misaligned with it. The numbers told part of the story. From ratings above 4.0 in the early 1980s, viewership fell below 2.0 by the early 2000s. Local stations began moving the time slot or swapping the show out entirely. In 1993, Cornelius stepped down as host after 23 years on camera, handing the baton to Maestro Clark, Shamar Moore, and Dorian Gregory. Each brought charisma. None could replicate Cornelius's quiet authority. Refreshes came. New hosts, set redesigns, more hip-hop bookings, but they felt like patches over a shifting foundation. From 2003 to 2006, production scaled back. Staff turnover accelerated. Editors left. Technical crew migrated to other projects. Costs mounted while the format aged, and investor confidence wavered. Publicly, Cornelius faded from view, seldom appearing or commenting. The show still aired weekly, but the center of gravity had moved. The train was coasting, the episode banned forever. In March 2006, during a taping in Los Angeles that should have been routine, something broke. Accounts from people on set describe an uneasy atmosphere from the jump. A reshuffled crew, a disorganized guest list, unclear direction from the top. Some said Cornelius was backstage, no longer in active production, but present and visibly disappointed in the show's direction. The episode featured a rising hip-hop act. Disputes between the artist's team and logistics delayed the start nearly an hour. When cameras finally rolled, the performance reportedly crossed visual boundaries the show had historically held. Provocative elements in choreography and costumes that clashed with the original vision. That was the line. Cornelius, sources say, called for an immediate stop to the editing process and requested an emergency conversation with the show's distribution partners. A major distributor, Tribune Entertainment, withdrew shortly after. The effect was seismic. Without that network support, Soul Train lacked the footprint to continue national broadcasts. In less than 3 weeks, internal data suggested over 40% of local affiliates had pulled the show. There was no official goodbye. The website stopped updating, networks quietly filled the time slot, the production calendar went blank. Industry insiders knew that taping, never aired, was effectively the last. Footage from the day remained with former staffers. Online, fan communities began whispering about a cursed performance. The unaired episode had done more than derail a single shoot. It had become the silent period at the end of a cultural sentence. Tragedy strikes the man behind it all. After the shutdown, the public conversation went quiet, and so did Don Cornelius. He declined interviews and appeared rarely. In a brief radio moment in 2007, he offered only this: "I think it went far enough." For someone who had steered the train for decades, it sounded like a farewell for himself as much as for the show. Reflections trickled out from those who were there. Rosie Perez described the ending as an unnamed sadness. Dorian Gregory, hosting in the final stretch, shared that clarity never arrived. Most people realized the show was over only when the taping schedule vanished from the system. Independent outlets began peeling back layers. A 2008 Vibe article argued that ratings weren't the true culprit. Trust was. The Soul Train Awards, running since 1987 and created by Cornelius, continued but were separated from the original brand. And in 2009, control fully transferred to BET. The ceremonies updated, modernized, and referenced the foundational years less and less. For longtime viewers, it deepened a sense of loss, like a cultural cornerstone moved without a plaque. Meanwhile, the archives started breathing again, digitally. VHS rips, performance clips, and vintage interviews from the 1970s and 1980s surfaced online and found millions of new eyes. A fresh fan base formed, people who hadn't grown up with the show but were magnetized by its sound, its look, its energy. The painful part of the timeline, the storm of the 2000s, largely remained unspoken. For Cornelius, personal troubles followed. In 2008, he was arrested on domestic violence charges, though he wasn't sentenced to jail time. In 2012, he died by suicide at his Los Angeles home. Obituaries remembered a trailblazer who left the stage softly, with too many questions still unanswered. Some began to speak of a Soul Train curse, not literal, more a shorthand for an uneasy ending that weighed heavy on those who built the show's magic. An immortal artistic legacy. Nearly 2 decades after disappearing from broadcast, Soul Train hasn't dimmed. It's evolved into a memory engine, revived through documentaries, scripted dramas, and museum exhibits. Each retelling underscores the same truth. Soul Train didn't just reflect culture, it shaped it, especially within the African American community. In 2019, BET's American Soul dramatized Cornelius's journey, with Cinqua Walls portraying the architect behind the platform. The series explored the show's early years against a turbulent national backdrop and spotlighted tensions the public rarely saw, like protecting Black identity in a television industry governed largely by white executives. While it didn't directly unpack the 2006 taping, it conveyed the pressure under the polish, the cost of keeping a vision intact. Beyond screens, institutions have moved to preserve the artifacts of that era. The Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture holds pieces from the show, including original costumes. Scholars have argued that Soul Train deserves preservation as a cultural asset, akin to Motown or the social art movements of the 1960s and 1970s. It wasn't just entertainment, it was documentation of a people's style, spirit, and sound in real time. Online, the collective memory keeps building. Thousands of clips have been reconstructed, sourced from personal archives and local stations. A generation born after 2000 has adopted the show's language, mimicking choreography, recreating fashion, organizing themed parties. The Soul Train Challenge went viral in 2021. Artists like Lizzo, Anderson, .Pac, and HER joined the celebration, honoring the classic line through contemporary rhythm. What was once retro now feels perennial. From a historical standpoint, there's a growing call for full restoration of the series from 1971 to 2006. Some early-year tapes have been digitally remastered and released on streaming platforms, but the final seasons are still largely untouched. The last episode, taped in 2006, hasn't been destroyed, but it also hasn't been released. Many believe it may never surface, for legal and content reasons. That absence is part of the myth now, a blank page everyone knows exists. And yet, the measure of what Don Cornelius built isn't the number of episodes. It's the definition he introduced, a music program as cultural declaration. Soul Train was the first place many Black Americans saw themselves on national TV, in their clothes, their dances, their music. That was power, especially in the early 1970s, when the country still bore the scars of segregation. The silence of 2006 couldn't erase that. If anything, it turned the show into an interrupted icon, and that incompleteness keeps the questions alive. What remains isn't just performance footage, it's a shared memory. For the people who danced to Curtis Mayfield, the families who tuned in every Saturday, and the dreamers who recognized themselves on screen, Soul Train was proof that a stage could be a mirror. The unaired episode may always stay in the shadows, but the light Cornelius sparked continues to spread. That light isn't only the legacy of a television program, it's a statement of identity, voice, and presence for a community once overlooked. And sometimes, what never aired is exactly what history refuses to forget. If you've watched Soul Train, or you're discovering it now, drop your thoughts below. What performance sticks with you? What moment moved you most? And if stories like this resonate, stick around. There's more to uncover in the untold corners of American television history.